Tánaiste, on the 3rd of July, the Israeli military began its largest and most violent raid on the heavily populated Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank in over 20 years. They came with tanks, they came with planes, they came with missiles, and they came with killer drones. They killed at least a dozen people. They displaced thousands. And according to the Deputy Governor of Jenin, they destroyed, burned or damaged at least 80% of homes in the refugee camp. They came in the name of the Israeli government, a government committed to the expansion of its programme of colonisation of Palestinian territories through a campaign of terror, of discrimination, of intimidation, of apartheid policies against the Palestinian people. A far-right government intent on fragmenting Palestinian territories and displacing Palestinians to the degree that the concept of a Palestinian state can no longer exist as a political objective within a two-state solution. The Israeli government are intent on reducing the Palestinian people to a disparate entity clinging to existence in a series of Bantustans. Today, we will no doubt hear the unanimity across this House in its condemnation of its actions of the Israeli military in the service of the Israeli state. Strong words, noble words, words that will attempt to exercise the horror of all who have witnessed the latest round of Israeli terror. And then the government will seek to move on. This simply cannot be allowed to happen again. Israel is an apartheid state, guilty of war crimes, of breaking international law. It is, in effect, a rogue state, and it must be called out as it is. Yet this government has done absolutely nothing to defend the human rights of Palestinians, to even attempt to hold Israel to account for its crimes, its war crimes, and contempt for human rights and international law. Worse than inaction is the appeasement policy of this government. Minister Coveney, for example, has admitted that the government is looking to hire a business development consultant in Israel. Fathom that. A breaker of international law, and we are seeking to appoint a business development consultant in that rogue state. This is all taking place alongside the shameful and the disingenuous actions of this government in its attempts to delay the illegal Israeli settlement divestment bill, which was introduced in this House at first stage in March, then moved on to second stage in May. And that bill, Minister, just to remind you and government, that bill is designed to end a shameful practice where this government, your government, in contravention of international law, allows the Irish Strategic Investment Fund to take money raised from the Irish taxpayers' money and invest that money on behalf of the state in a series of business entities operating in the illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied territories. And the introduction of that bill will compel ISAF to divest itself, divest taxpayers' money from holdings in 9 businesses that were on the UN database of 112 companies that were operating in the illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied territories. And instead of supporting what is a very logical, simple bill to end the practice of using taxpayers' money to prop up these businesses that are profiteering on the back of international war crimes and the breach of international law, the government has invested spurious rationales to justify your failures to initiate any actions in defence of the Palestinian people. And in this instance, the government has opted to kick the bill down the road for 9 months to allow for a review of the legislation to take place, as the government did not view the database as a live document, arguing that it was not capable of being updated. It was not going to be updated. And shamefully, the government have adopted the same language, the same arguments as the oppressor in this instance, which of course is Israel. And since then, continuing engagement and dialogue between the UN and business entities that were on that list has led to the removal of 15 business enterprises from that very same database, as they no longer or were in the process of ceasing their involvement in the business and activities listed in the Occupied Territories Bill. So it is a live document, it's an evolving document, it's a changing document. So the very argument that the government used to stop this bill moving forward has been completely undermined. Of the 15 entities removed from the database, only one, General Mills, which was on the original list of business entities which ISAF had invested in. That leaves 8 businesses remaining on that list. 8 businesses that are actively operating in the occupied territories, in which we, as Irish taxpayers, are invested in through this government and through ISAF. Minister and government, if words are to mean anything, if the rhetoric is to mean anything here, it must be matched by action. And the government, the government, cannot continue to hide behind the same fig leaf which you have hidden behind in relation to the advancement of the Occupied Territories Bill, because the commencement, the moving forward with the illegal Israeli divestment bill is in your hands and your hands only. So if your rhetoric of condemnation is to mean anything, it must be followed by action. It must be followed by action. So, Minister, I'll conclude. Words of condemnation are great. You must take great pride in listening to your government coming out time and time again condemning, and rightfully so, the illegal actions of Israel. But if that rhetoric is to mean anything, there's 3 simple but critical things the government must do. They must officially recognise the state of Palestine. They must immediately divest from the illegal settlements, the businesses that are operating there using taxpayers' money, making you complicit in the war crimes that are taking place. And you must move forward with the Occupied Territories Bill.